Hi, everyone. Hello. Well, I am super glad to be here because I just bombed an econ exam, so you know what? You can cheer for. Sorry, Mom. So we're doing really well. But hi, everyone. Happy homecoming week, first and foremost. You can cheer for that. It's exciting. Okay, there we go. Okay, amazing. I just want to say thank you all for being out here. I know with talent going on and pumping and midterm season, that to be out here is awesome. So welcome. So my name is Ryan Schnitker. I'm currently a sophomore here at the university. I get the "what is your major" question a lot, more like every single day. My answer has not changed in about 2 years. I'm still undeclared. So I am a J school. Thank you. I am a J school dropout at 9 weeks in, so I'm doing really well. But we'll see where that major finally takes itself. If I were to describe myself in 3 words, I would describe myself using these: Jesus, camp, and coffee. Why those 3? One, I love Jesus. My faith is extremely important to me. I was born and raised Catholic. It's brought me some of my best friends. It brings me so much joy. Second, I love coffee. I'm a huge coffee addict, probably more like a coffee snob, so you can probably find me downtown studying with a friend over a good cup of coffee. But that's where I love to meet people. I love to meet them over a good cup of coffee, hear their story, just talk with them, and just have a great time. And then my third thing is camp. It's been 2 minutes in, and you've already heard the word camp. I'm so sorry. But I'm a huge summer camp enthusiast. Not only do I get to love on all the other campers and all the other staffers, camp is just really a place for me to be myself, to be goofy, to be extroverted, to just be kind of whatever. So that's camp. That's me in a quick sense, honestly. But for the past 4 weeks, we've heard from each of our 4 focus missionaries on each of the 4 different focus pillars. Jack talked about chastity, McKenna on sobriety, Connor on excellence, and then Carrie Ann ended the series with mission. And so that actually ended our series with mission, and now we're shifting to a new series. But when I think of what Carrie Ann talked about last week about mission, my mind automatically thinks of the universal call to holiness and the call to sainthood. And lucky for you, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about for the next 3 weeks, is sainthood. So buckle up, strap in. It's going to be great. So this series is called Show Me Saints. There's a pun intended in that as well. I didn't come up with it, though. But I'm actually, before we dive into all the saints, I'm going to start off with a couple quotes. I'm going to be like, why these quotes? So this past summer, here we go with the camp stories. Are you ready? I was able to work at Camp Kateri Tekakwitha. It is in Williamsburg, Kansas, ran by the Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas. And I was fortunate enough to be a camper for 8 years. And these past 2 summers, I've worked there. And God willing, I'll be out there for another one. But it is honestly just one of my favorite places on earth. I often describe it as a little slice of heaven. Here are some photos, Rep and Mizzou homecoming, and some Catholicism up here. I love being in the air, which you'll find out more about that later. Awesome sunsets, great people. So that's camp for you. But this past summer, some staff members and I decided, you know what, we're going to have a quote wall. And so every time that we would laugh or cry, or a camper would say something ridiculously funny, because they say honestly whatever's on their mind, we would write it on a Post-it note and stick it on the wall. And so it started out with one Post-it note. I know exactly which one it is. I just can't share it here tonight. But over the course of the summer, they just continued to get more and more on the wall. So when I was thinking about this talk, I was like, I want to include those. So I didn't have them here. So my dad, shout out to Michael, he actually ended up mailing them all here. Here are all the quotes from this summer. I wanted to share a couple with you here. So this one occurred when a camper struggled to canoe. And this camper said, you know what? This is a lot harder than Pocahontas made it look. Thank you. Awesome. This is another camper. We always end and open and close in prayer. And this camper said this: Dear God, hello. Please help me to poop later. Okay, great prayer. Amen to that. This was one day when I was working the rock wall, and this camper said, you know, I made it to the top of the positive wall last year, which is one side of our rock wall. I don't think I can do it again this year because I ate too many cookies at lunch today. Okay, cool. And then this camper, so one of our rope staff members, she asked this camper, is this your first time on high ropes? Which is like a common question. And this camper responded, yes. You're taking my high ropes virginity. So our campers, I love them to death. They honestly say whatever's on their minds. But we're like, why do I even include those? Why are we even talking about that? The thing is because each of those post notes for me has a single memory attached to it. Each of those post-it notes has a single story that is attached to it. And I get to look back on all of those and flip through them. I was flipping through them the other night, and I was really laughing, and Jefferson wasn't because he just didn't understand them. Sorry. But I love them because it just reminds me of my time at camp. But that's just like the saints, because each saint has a specific story of their own life. And if I were to define saints, I would say that saints are holy men and women who have gone before us and are seen as being exceptionally close to Christ and lived a life of virtue here on earth. Exceptionally close to Christ and lived a life of virtue here on earth. And there are actually two types of saints that we recognize. One is what we would know as like the canonized saints. So those are venerated by the church and go through a long canonization process. And the other type of sainthood is everyone else in heaven, and then all of them are saints. To quickly go through the canonization process, the person must be deceased. The diocese will open up an investigation into their life to see if they lived a holy life. Those results will get sent to the Vatican. The Vatican will then continue that investigation, looking for miracles. When one miracle is declared and approved, that person becomes blessed. And then after a second miracle is declared and approved, then that person becomes a canonized saint and is venerated by the church. So that's sainthood really, really quickly. But when I hear the word saint, my mind automatically thinks to the ones that we all really know. I think of St. Ignatius of Loyola, shout out to the Jesuits, who who was born into a wealthy family, didn't really live the best life until a cannonball to the knee. Pretty much is what made him just like turn his life to Christ. During his healing process, he would read a book about the life of the saints and the life of Christ. And from there, he went to go found the Jesuits. He became a soldier for Christ and a man for others. Or I think of St. Kateri Teka with my homegirl, honestly, because she lived in a village that she was persecuted for her faith. And when she contracted smallpox, it left her blind and scars all over her face. But she recognized the inner beauty in herself and the beauty that is found from the Eucharist. So she would travel to different villages completely blind in order to go adore the sacraments. Or I think of Padre Pio, who could physically bilocate. I think that's just so weird. Who received the full stigmata. And if you know what the stigmata is, that means the wounds of Christ on your hands, your side, and your feet. I think of the apostles, Andrew, James, John, Peter. I think of all of the holy men and women who have dedicated their lives to Christ as priests, sisters, brothers, and martyrs. And when I think of them, I'm like, that's funny. There's no way that I can become a saint like that. I'm not living my life radically. I'm not receiving the stigmata. I can't bilocate. There's no way that I can become a saint. There's no way. But then you hear stories of one man who's currently on his path to sainthood right now, and that man is Blessed Pier, Giorgio Frassati. And he's not a saint just yet. He's not a canonized saint just yet, but he is well on his way. So Frassati was born in April of 1901. Here's some photos of him in the town of Turin, Italy, into a wealthy and known family of his village. His sister was Luciana, and he had two parents. Get this is the most Italian name you'll ever hear, Alfredo. His name was Alfredo. Okay, like the pasta I had for lunch today. That was his father. His mother was Adelaide. But Frassati was known to write letters to his family when he was with them and when he was far away from them because he cared about them so much. Honestly, I would say that he lived an extremely similar life to ours. He attended school. He fought with his sister and his parents. And this is actually a letter that he wrote when he was 7, asking for forgiveness. So he said, "Dear Mama, today I was bad because I made my mama cry, who loves me so much. I did 2 very bad things today, so I was told by the teacher, and her stern and sad face told me that she is not happy with me. I hurt everyone, and I am upset. I did wrong, but I beg you to forgive me. I really repent, and I promise you that I will become good to make you forget how much you have suffered today. Forgive me." Like a 7-year-old wrote that. Like I was writing my ABCs at that age, and he's like, I beg you to forgive me? Like that's insane. Frassati would also like play outside, finding himself in the outdoors in the wilderness. And he also just left home just like we have to go to college. And like he just like lived a normal life like we do. So he wrote another letter in 1924. He said, "Dear Mama, I took the economics exam today." He got a 90 out of 100. I'm not going to get that. And then it says also, "Yesterday I took the driving license exam. Everyone is well. Greetings and kisses. Pier, Giorgio." He is such a normal guy, which I think makes him so relatable to each and every single one of us. But what I love about him most is that he was Catholic. Even though his parents, especially his father, didn't really approve of that. But he recognized the good in everyone else. As I mentioned before, he was born into a wealthy family. And so he would often give up his first-class train ticket so that they could ride the train, and then he would find an alternative way home. Or one cold winter night, a family approached his house and knocked on his door, asking for shelter, clothes. And to try not awaken his family and his parents, he quickly took off his shoes and his coat and gave it to them and sent them on their way. He never looked for recognition for this. He never looked for praise for this behavior, because he was just living the life that Christ had lived. He also had a really devout devotion to the Eucharist. So like I said, his parents weren't super religious. So in order to be woken up for Mass in the morning, he would have a small piece of string wrapped around his big toe. And a servant in the house would come and pull on the little string to wake him up in the morning to go to Mass. Like, seriously, I can barely get out of bed in the morning and, like, sometimes even go to Mass. But here he was being woken up by a piece of a string. Like, what is that? Like, it's just so cool, because he's just, like, had such a devout devotion to the Eucharist that he's like, you know what, I'm going to do whatever it is so I can go receive daily communion. What people most know Frassati for is the fact that he's an avid mountain climber. He loved adventures and new experiences and new things. So he would take his friends up and climb mountains, often praying the rosary with them, opening scripture, or just talking about their faith. And when they got to the top, he would be like, you know what, I challenge you. I challenge you to race me down this mountain. And if I get to the bottom of the mountain first, you have to go to Mass with me. Like, that's some seriously cool evangelization. I wish we had mountains here in Missouri, but we don't. But he did so many small things that allowed him to live out his faith. But unfortunately, at the age of 24, he contracted polio and died. And when his family attended his funeral, they were astonished at what they saw, because thousands and thousands and thousands of people lined the streets and the church in order to pay respects to the man who gave them so much. His parents didn't even know who these people were, but somehow Frassati had touched each and every single one of their lives. He was truly a holy man, and he has such a cool story that's really impacted my life lately, because he's allowed me to reflect on where I can grow. Frassati makes sainthood seem like attainable. He makes it seem real, not far off in the distance. I believe there's a quote by Pope Francis. Pope Francis said this: "The saints were not superhuman. They were people who loved God in their hearts and who shared this joy with others." And Frassati was a shining example of what it means to live life with that joy, and to live life with his life rooted in Christ fully. His most well-known saying, and one that most everyone knows, is "verso alto," to the heights. And this particular phrase has a special meaning to me, because I see it as a challenge for myself to push myself further. So this past summer, I was a ropes crew facilitator. My good friend Abby Summers over there. And what that means with being ropes crew facilitator, we were in charge of zip lining and rock wall climbing and power pole and doing anything that involves ropes and carabiners, which is obviously why I have a carabiner on my water bottle. I try to be cool, but you know. So we would climb up this pole every single day to our zip line platform, and sketched on this pole says "to the heights" right here. It was a constant reminder for me to push myself further. Because I know that I'm made for greatness, I know that I'm made for more, and I know that I'm called to be a saint. But I also see this phrase, "to the heights," as sort of a warning. Sort of a warning to really just examine my life and see where I am on that journey up that mountain. Because a mountain climb is not easy at all. It's got a lot of obstacles along the way. And obviously, it's just like, when I see this phrase, "to the heights," it just allows me to recognize, to see where I am on that mountain. One day, towards the end of the summer, I was sitting on top of the rock wall with one of my good friends, Sam, and he asked me, "Ryan, what is your story?" And I honestly looked at him, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, if we can talk about that, like, I was just kind of like taken aback because I wasn't really expecting it. I sat there and thought, I could tell story after story after story about my life, but are those the ones that I really want to tell? And so I don't even remember what response I gave him. But from there, I have pretty much wrestled with that question of, Ryan, what is your story? Similar to what is Frassati's story? What are these campers' stories that were found on these Post-it notes? So my story starts back in good old Kansas City. My family's pretty tiny with both of my parents, Mike and Teresa, and my two older sisters, Emily and Allison. And honestly, my life and Frassati's life was pretty similar towards the beginning. Because I would go to school, I would play outside, I would fight with my sister, Emily. You can ask her about it. Well, she'll tell you one side, I'll tell you the other side. My side's correct. But growing up, I was essentially a cradle Catholic, attending both Catholic grade school and high school. And in school, it's kind of always known as the Jesus kid. I planned masses and prayer services, and that's what I did. I loved it, and that label kind of bugged me at first. But then, I was whatever, I'll get over it. I'm the Jesus kid, that's cool. And so my faith was steady. It was a steady ascent up the mountain. It wasn't a sprint. It wasn't a crawl. It was just a steady ascent. And honestly, everything was going really great. Honestly, my life was really awesome. I didn't really have any issues. Until there's this one day, March 2nd, 2016. It was a regular day at school. Wow, this always happens when I talk about this. I came home from school to an empty house, which kind of I was like, okay, everyone's gone, that's fine. I just came home from school. And my mom's purse was there, and her car was in the drive room. I'm like, that's weird. Maybe she's walking, That's what moms do, they walk. And so I said, okay, that's cool. Didn't think anything. I called my mom, I texted my mom, I called my mom, I texted my mom. Didn't really get a response, but I had to be back up at Rockhurst to work on some stuff for a Kairos retreat. And for an upcoming Kairos retreat. And if you don't know what Kairos is, that is a Catholic retreat held in many high schools. And so I finished up this work. She texted me. She's like, hey, when are you getting home? And I'm like, 9:30-ish, 10 o'clock. We had a lot of stuff to do to prepare for this retreat. And so I come on home, turn the corner of the left, and I see all of my family's cars in our driveway. And we have a really small family, if you ask us. It's really small. And so my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and everyone was there. I'm like, okay, I just forgot someone's birthday, that's my bad. And so I parked the car in the driveway, get my bag out of the trunk, go and sit down inside and walk into the living room. And that's when I noticed that something was off. My intuition, my gut kicked in. And so literally the words that I said, and I still vividly remember saying, was, who died? And so I remember saying those words. My mom approached me. She said, Ryan, Papa, who was our grandfather, he passed away today from a sudden heart attack. I remember just kind of standing there and being like, okay, that's not real. I just saw him on Sunday, and today was Wednesday. And I saw him 3 days ago. He was living. He was perfectly fine. But she said, no, he died from a heart attack today. I was still pretty in shock, so I went to school the next day, actually, because that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be surrounded by my Rockers community. And the funeral came and went. It was real. It had happened. But still in shock, because at first I thought I was going to be okay. But then I quickly realized that I wasn't. That was the time in my life that I would often isolate myself in my room more than a normal angsty teenager to stay away from my family. That's when I started drinking as a way to heal that pain that I had suffered. I remember being extremely angry at God just for taking someone away from me that had mattered so much to me. I was still Catholic. I would still go to Mass. I would still say those prayers with my family. But I was just going through those motions. They didn't really mean anything to me. I honestly lived this way, found myself racing back down that mountain instead of racing back towards the other way. And I lived this way for honestly quite some time, and then camp entered in my life. But camp wasn't that saving grace because Christ was. Camp was a way for me to re-encounter Christ that summer. Because camp showed me that what I had been missing all along was Christ in my life. So I actually have two stories I want to share with you, actually from this past summer, that just really just kind of hit home of keeping our lives centered on Christ. And the first one includes a high school camper who has Down syndrome, and I was able to be his personal Sherpa for the week. And what a personal Sherpa is, it means that I get to travel with him to each activity, help him get ready in the morning, Bible study, just kind of be a camper alongside him. And it was honestly the best week of my life. It was so much fun, so much joy. He has the biggest heart, the biggest smile, and the biggest love for biscuits and gravy. It's absolutely insane. You have no idea what my morning consisted of then. Something else. And he'd latch onto me and hug me, and it was just great. Such a great week, challenging week, exhausting week, but so fruitful. And this particular night, it was Thursday night in what we call DPN, Deep Prayer Night, and that's just when we expose the Blessed Sacrament. And it was kind of stormy that night, so we had a lot of thunder and lightning. He wasn't really too fond of that. So we were sitting there praying and adoring the Eucharist, and his sister was actually a camper as well, and she recognized that he was kind of a little uneasy. So she came up to him and grabbed him by the hand, and then they went to the sanctuary together up towards the monstrance. And honestly, I don't know if it was my pure exhaustion from that week or just the beauty of that sight, but I just completely broke down with some holy cow, that just happened in front of me. Seeing a sibling physically take you to the Eucharist is so cool. My mind immediately thought of the time that Emily did the exact same thing for me when I was a camper, when she comforted me one night in adoration when we were at camp together. Just so cool to recognize that. And then the second story that I have is a junior high camper, and it was also during adoration one night. And I was on a prayer team with one of my good friends, Wyatt, and she had approached us and asked her to pray for her family and some other stuff that was on her heart. So Wyatt and I prayed over her and finished our prayers. And normally, after the prayers finished, the camper will then go back to their seat or go to another part of the chapel. But she had stayed there. And she stayed there for quite some time, for probably about 5 minutes. And so Wyatt and I looked at each other and were like, that's cool. We'll just continue to pray over you silently and sing and do praise and worship. But I remember that at that point that she decided that she was going to leave, she turned around and gave us the candle back. And she took 2 steps forward and then looked back and she asked us, where do I go? And I remember looking at Wyatt, who was on my right shoulder, and then just looking back at her, and we said, go to the Eucharist. Go to Jesus Christ, go to the monstrance. Just go to him. And that was the first time in my life that I'd been able to physically be yo, that's the answer. And it was so cool to be able to physically point someone to Jesus Christ. Because just like those campers and just like Frassati, we are called to run to him, to seek him, to travel to that mountaintop. Because when my grandpa died, I didn't, though. I ran away as fast as I could, which isn't very fast, but as fast as I could in fear. I filled my life with what I thought would bring me fulfillment. And it did for the time being, but it wasn't the fulfillment that I was looking for. I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any means, that I'm going to be a saint after this talk, because I'm far from it. But I look towards Pier Giorgio as a guide on how we can live a life of sainthood in present day. The word Sherpa, I don't know the physical meaning of it, but Sherpas are guides on mountains, actually. They I believe they climb Mount Everest and help people along, and they guide them. And that's what Frassati is for us. That's what I did for the camper who has Down syndrome. I guided him along that week. And the camper who I was able to point up to the Eucharist, I guided her up there as well. And so I ask you, what do you seek? Do you seek a life that is filled with worldly pleasures and instant gratification? Because that might make you happy, but it'll only last as long as its source does. Or do you seek something greater, something that will bring you joy, something that will draw you and others closer to sainthood? I believe, Frassati said this one day. Every day that passes, I fall more desperately in love with the mountains. I'm ever more determined to climb the mountains, to scale the mighty peaks, to feel that pure joy which can only be felt in the mountains. Christ is that mountain. Because that's where we're called to be. Because he's the one that's going to bring us the most joy. And I have noticed a difference in my life that when I focus my life on him, that I am so much more joyful. I'll get up in the morning. I'll not have a cup of coffee. I'll be productive. I might work out, probably not. But when I have him in my life versus when I didn't have him in my life, my story is a lot different. Because Frassati died at 24. I'm almost 20. And he died at 24, and his story ended on earth, and he is having a cause for sainthood. And I'm 20. If I were to die in 4 years, would someone be like, oh yeah, let's investigate Ryan's life and see if it's a cause for sainthood? Probably not. Because he, from the beginning, lived his life with Christ. And it's okay, wherever you are on this mountain, I'm not expecting anyone to be up here already, because I'm not. I'm at Camp 1. But I have found, because of Frassati and the way that he lived his life, that's where my story needs to be heading. So I challenge you to live like Frassati did. We don't have to be a martyr, a sister, a priest, or a brother, although they are great to become saints. We can be ourselves. And it's through camp that I've realized that I am called to bring others to sainthood, and I am called to bring myself to sainthood as well. We just need to say yes. Say yes just like Mama Mary did. Say yes to daily prayer, to the rosary, to the Eucharist, to adoration, to relationship with Christ. Say yes to those new adventures, to new experiences, to kind of just living life on the edge. Say yes to going up to new heights with him. In a minute, we'll hear a song that I was able to hear every Thursday night as we set it for Friday morning prayer. And our Friday morning prayer was special at camp because it included the saints. So as we get all the relics out of their cases and the icons, we'd set them all up on the sanctuary floor. And after that all occurred, we would sit down, we would do a litany, and then we would hear this song. We don't have time to do the litany tonight, but I do want to play this song for you guys because it serves as such a great reminder that we can all become saints. And I urge you to reflect on these questions. What is your story? What is your story? Where are you on this mountaintop? You closer towards the top, bottom, base camp, camp 1, camp 2? And what is keeping you from traveling further to the heights? Is it excessive drinking? Is it drugs? Is it pornography and masturbation? Is it doubt? Just like Frassati, how can we fully center our lives on Christ and strive towards sainthood? And how can we become the saints that we were made to be?